Hey YouTube, Kira Twig here, bringing you all my Magical Labyrinth Yu-Gi-Oh deck profile for December 2020. Been wanting to do a deck that focuses on some of the support from the Paradox brothers for quite a while now, being the use of Labyrinth Wall with Magical Labyrinth and Wall Shadow. It was definitely an interesting, setup for the time when this card came out. They actually used the entire Labyrinth Wall as the game board when they had the tag duel in the first season of Yu-Gi-Oh! But this card was actually just a level 5 monster with 3000 defense that you had to equip Magical Labyrinth onto to special summon Wall Shadow, which had no other effect aside from the restrictions of being special summoned that way. So I wanted to make sort of a defense style deck that focused on the Wall Shadow playstyle, along with the Labyrinth Wall and a couple other defensive cards for the deck and cards that just overall support that playstyle. So let's go ahead and get started with the deck profile. So for the monsters, we're running 3 Labyrinth Wall. I honestly thought this card had more, releases and sets, but actually only came out in the Joey's World Legendary Collection and the 3rd Yu-Gi-Oh! Booster Spell Ruler. But with this one, it's just got 3000 defense, so definitely a difficult card for your opponent to get over. So you want to play defensively with this card. We have plenty of ways to special summon this card out onto the field, and a couple other ways to utilize it with the extra deck as well. But you need it set up with, Magical Labyrinth to get out your Wall Shadow, which is just as defensive as a card as the Labyrinth Wall. But we're also running 3 of it just for consistency, because potentially you can summon this card 3 times since we're running the 3 Labyrinth Wall with Magical Labyrinth. With this card, its restriction is it cannot be normal summoner set. It must be special summoned with Magical Labyrinth, which that card, you tribute the Labyrinth Wall with Magical Labyrinth equipped to it to special summon Wall Shadow from your hand or deck to the field. The only difference with Wall Shadow is it has the 3000 defense points and 1600 attack. Once again, just being a defensive card that you will use in the deck and go off of the traps and spells that we run to help support this playstyle. I honestly find it pretty weird that, Wall Shadow is a warrior type monster, but, it just thought was really, really cool when it came out of the Labyrinth Wall. It didn't have to actually go on the spaces for Labyrinth Wall. It could just, go through the wall. I think it destroyed Yugi's Beaver Warrior and then was destroyed itself by Joey's Flame Swordsman. But a very, very awesome looking card at that for sure. It has nothing to do with the actual Shadow Ghoul. I think they use Magical Labyrinth to put, it's a very, very complex, part of Season 1, but still part of the defensive play for the deck, which we'll get to in just a little bit as well. I wanted a few more cards because there's not a lot of monsters that you run in this deck for the playstyle of defense with, Wall Shadow. We have the Paradox Brothers, multiple other cards, including the, Labyrinth Tank, which was an option, but Sanga of the Thunder, Kazijin, and all them. But we're sticking to just the defensive plays. Those cards are more of an offensive playstyle. So we're running 3 Millennium Shield as well. I wanted to make a deck that focused on Millennium Shield for a good while, and, Rebecca Hawking's spell card, Ring of Magnetism, onto the Millennium Shield for the defensive part of her deck. And she did run Shadow Ghoul in her deck also, so I felt the two could work very, very well together for the play. Millennium Shield and the Labyrinth Wall are very, very similar in the fact that they have 3000 defense, 0 attack, and also the level 5 normal monster, which would work very well with some of the spells that I'll go over when we get to the spells. But once again, just defensive play style with this card. You want just to either set it up and have your opponent attack into it so they can hit some pretty big damage with this card's defense. But if you don't have the special summon option for these cards, I am also running 3 Junk Forward. I chose this card just because if you control no monsters, you can special summon this card from your hand. So you can special summon it and then just tribute out either your Labyrinth Wall or Millennium Shield onto the field. Most of the time with Millennium Shield, I'll tribute it face down. So then when my opponent attacks into it, they'll take the damage from there. Or with Labyrinth Wall, I can, tribute it in attack position and then equip Magical Labyrinth from my hand to this card and then summon out Wall Shadow from the deck if I wanted to use that play. But just preference on whichever one I have in my hand to tribute out using the Junk Forward. And that is it for the monsters. I run a very, very low monster count, but there are plenty of searchable cards in the deck to make up for that. But one of the important cards in the deck, with it being the Magical Labyrinth deck, and that is the spell Magical Labyrinth. I thought of running cards, like Labyrinth of Nightmares, ones that focus on defense position plays as well. But with Link monsters, I decided to keep it out of the deck for now. But with Magical Labyrinth, you equip Labyrinth Wall with this card and then tribute it to special summon your Wall Shadow from your deck. So with this card, it's just that easy to summon out your go-to boss monster, the Wall Shadow. You just have to have the equip spell onto your Magical Labyrinth, which, like I said, this is a fun deck. You're going to invest a lot in this one play alone because you have to tribute both of those cards to get a card, with the only difference being, the 1600 attack compared to it. But that 1600 attack will make up for it when we go over some of the traps as well. For more of the spell search, I am also running 3 Summoner Arts. You add 1 level 5 or higher normal monster from your deck to your hand. So you can either run and add Millennium Shield or your Labyrinth Wall. You have plenty of search power with this card alone in the deck, and it's not a once per turn, so if you open up multiples of this card, you can just search more and more cards to add to your hand also. But you need a quicker way to special summon that card to the field as well, so I'm running 3 Ancient Rules. You special summon 1 level 5 or higher normal monster from your hand, and you can special summon this card in defense position or attack position, whatever you need, but most of the time you're going to want to special summon it in defense position because the point of the deck is to play defensively. So 3 of the Ancient Rules and 3 Summoner Arts just make for easy search and special summon consistency for any of our go-to monsters that we're running in the deck. But with this special summon option, I also run 3 Inferno Reckless Summon. When exactly 1 monster with 1500 or less attack is special summoned to your field while your opponent controls a face-up monster. Special summon as many monsters as possible with the same name as that summoned monster from your hand, deck, or graveyard in attack position. Also, your opponent special summons as many monsters as possible with the same name as 1 face-up monster from their hand, deck, or graveyard. So you're giving your opponent the option to special summon, but we're also giving the fact that we'll be able to special summon out multiples of whichever one we have on the field, which we can use for a more extra deck play focused, while the one we special summon with Ancient Rules on the field and defense, and giving us the other 2 to overlay or link summon with when we summon them out onto the field. And for some of the one-ofs that I run in the deck, I also run 1 Reinforcements in the Army, just the search power for our junk forward in the deck, so we can search out the warriors, special summon it, and have a tribute play for that. Or once again, having junk I was about to say forward in the deck for those extra deck plays really do help as well. 1 Monster Reborn for special summoning back the monsters we use. We contribute for the Wall Shadow using our Labyrinth Wall, but also being able just to summon it back on the field for more defense against our opponent is a big help for sure. I also run the 1 Instant Fusion. This is here just for the fact that we can go into another level 5 fusion to use for our Xyz plays with our other level 5s in the deck. And 1 Call by the Grave just with the investment for the Wall Shadow. If your opponent stops it with Ash Blossom, it's a big problem there. So relying on the 1 Call by the Grave can definitely come in handy for, just making sure that special summon goes through. And that is it for the spells. We're now going to move on to basically a half spell, half trap player preference, depending on what card you want to run. For this lineup, we have 3 potential cards that can be in this slot, either for the spell count or the trap lineup, with Battle Mania being the first one up. You activate during your opponent's standby phase. All face-up monsters your opponent control are changed to attack position, cannot change their battle positions this turn, and all monsters your opponent currently control must attack this turn if able. So they're going to have to attack into your either Millennium Shield or Labyrinth Wall or Wall Shadow that you have on the field and take some pretty heavy damage, and even more damage if we have some of our other traps, which I'll get to in just a second, set up to boost those defensive powers of your monsters on the field. Or you can add Hidden Armory or mix in any of these numbers you prefer. With Hidden Armory, send the top card of your deck to the graveyard to add 1 equipped spell card from your deck or graveyard to your hand. You cannot normal or set the turn you activate this, which you're not really affected too much by that. If you special summon with Ancient Rules, you can still get your Labyrinth Wall out onto the field and then equip it with your Magical Labyrinth for that play. Or if you wanted to go the Rebecca Hawkins play and use Ring of Magnetism, it will lower the attack and defense of your monster, but make it so your opponent can only attack that monster. So if you have some other cards on the field, they won't be able to attack into those monsters. So more of a protection play. But once again, player preference, what you want this final spot to be in the deck. As for the other traps, I also run 3 Spike Shield with Chain. You target one face-up monster on the field, equip this card to that target. It gains 500 attack, and if the equipped monster attacks or is attacked while in defense position, it gains defense equal to its attack during damage step only. So what's great about this card is if you equip it to a monster in defense position, with Wall Shadow being my preferred one to go for because it has, attack compared to Labyrinth Wall and Millennium Shield, you'll be able to boost it up by 500, making it 2100 attack, and then adding that onto its defense means if your opponent attacks into anything with it totaling 5100 points, they're going to take a lot of damage for sure using this card, which could potentially be game depending on how they attack into it. If you have more and more of these cards, it just adds up the number as well. So setting up the Wall Shadow with this back row will definitely be scary if your opponent tries to attack into it. And also, for the play, I run 3 D2 Shield. You select one face-up defense position monster you control. For this turn, its defense become double its original defense. So with that power boost as well, the numbers just add up more and more. And this could potentially be the play to make it so your opponent drains away all their life points with that one play using this one card. Very, very scary for sure when you have all the traps lined up. And even more scarier if Battle Mania and your opponent has to attack into your monster on the field. And then lastly, for the traps, I run 3 back to the front. Just target one monster in your graveyard. Special summon in defense. We run plenty of defensive plays. This could even save you from a battle phase on your opponent's turn. If they clear it out with a monster effect, just being able to special summon your Labyrinth Wall back onto the field can be the wall you need to protect you from attacks this turn. And that is it for the main deck. We'll now move on to the extra deck. For the Xyz plays, I run the 1 Wind Up Arsenal Zenmao, the 1 number 61 Volcasaurus. When you can go into the rank 5 plays, it's just very useful to have these options available to you. I also run the 1 Gaia Dragon, the Thunder Charger, to overlay into these and inflict some piercing damage against your opponent. It is another big help for sure. I also run the 1 Sea Monster of Theseus for the instant fusion target that we have. You can make another level 5 on the field to overlay with your Xyz monsters. If you wanted to run any level 10 synchros, it can be an option too for that since Theseus is a tuner monster. For the Link monsters, I run 1 Isolde, 2 Tales of the Noble Knights, 1 Asa, the Earth Charmer, 1 Mrs. Radiant, 1 Nightmare Cerberus, 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 1 Security Dragon, 1 Underclock Taker, 1 Decode Talker, 1 Triple Burst Dragon, 1 Nightmare Unicorn, and 1 Borolo Dragon. You don't really go into the extra deck too much for the Link monsters. I mostly rely on the XYZ and Fusion monster, but when you have them as options, it's just good in case you ever need to go into them. And as for one of my favorite go-to plays, it revolves around the Ancient Rules, Inferno Reckless, and also the normal monster of choice in the deck, which it can be either the Millennium Shield or Labyrinth Wall. Just being able to special summon the card out into the field, and then activating your Inferno Reckless summon will give you 2 more monsters on the field for you to play. And then with this setup, you'll be able to either have the defensive strategy, depending on if you have any of the additional traps in your hand to use, but you'll also be able to use your other 2 additional monsters, which you can summon the first one in defense. The other 2 have to be in attack position though, so remember that for the play. But then you'll be able to overlay if you need to go into Zenmao to destroy your opponent's set cards with this. It's the play for sure for that. But since you'll be giving your opponent monsters, also you can use Volcasaurus to destroy that monster and then inflict burn damage to them also. And then if you have the additional cards set up in the back row, like doubling your Millennium Shield's defense, or even making it so they have to attack into the Millennium Shield or your Labyrinth Wall, whichever one you have set up. Very, very scary with the remaining cards you may have in your hand. The great thing about the Spike Shield with Chain is even if you just open up the junk forward in your hand, being able to at least special summon this card in defense and set up the Spike Shield with Chain. If your opponent were to attack into it, it will boost up its attack by 500, making it 2900. So still pretty difficult to get over with this card alone if you have to rely on this because you don't have any of the other level 5s. But you have plenty of search in the deck, so it should be at least easier to open up those cards. But also remember with the Wall Shadow and the setup play, you have plenty of options just to have the big damage with the Wall Shadow as your go-to card. But remember, you can only special summon it with your magical Labyrinth that you'll have to set up with the Labyrinth Wall, and then go for the same defensive plays we spoke of before, using the Wall Shadow, just better since it has the 1600 attack for the defensive boost. But that is it for the deck profile. I hope you all enjoyed. I definitely do like focusing on these old archetypes from Season 1, especially the Wall Shadow is one of the first episodes I ever saw of the Yu-Gi-Oh series, so definitely made a lasting impression on me for sure. But until next time, please don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, and Kira Twig out.